What is up, guys? Welcome back to Will of DDT. My name's Anonymous, and today we are going to be going over my OP6 Sabo deck profile that I took to regionals just a couple days ago. So for those of you who don't know, there was a regional in Peoria, Illinois just this last weekend, and I took Sabo, and I had an absolute blast, man. It was a lot of fun. And my win record was 6-3. Not proud, but I guess not disappointed either. 6-3 is right where I can at least show that the deck has some potential. But yeah, one of those losses I had no business losing either. I know doing too much shoulda, woulda, coulda kind of takes away your credibility as a player, but yeah, it was a very small but fatal misplay that I made that otherwise I could have easily won that game. So yeah, very close to going 7-2 with Sabo, basically. Yeah, I'm very happy with that. And for those of you who might be wondering my reasoning for like why I'm even playing Sabo in OP6, it's just, as I was watching the OP6 meta to shape up to what it is here in North America, it became pretty clear that the main contenders were going to be Gecko, Moria, and Katakuri, with Sakazuki falling off a little bit just in anticipation of the ban coming up, as well as, a sprinkling of, Yamato, Perona, Reiju, and a few other decks. So yeah, I wanted to build something a little off meta that could take on all of those leaders, particularly Moria and Katakuri, because that's what I expected to see the most of. And yeah, Sabo serves as a very good counter to Moria and Katakuri. That's not to say the games are easy, but you really shut down a lot of their favorite plays. And so, yeah, aside from Reiju, which this deck has a terrible matchup into, and it's almost impossible to win, even though I did beat one at the regional in my final round. Besides Reiju, everything else, Sabo is very, very capable of beating. And yeah, it's just really exciting playing this deck. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of nice being able to throw your opponents a curveball. I feel like an advantage of playing off meta is that a lot of times people just aren't prepared for what your game plan is. They don't really know what you want to do. I lost my die roll almost every single time, and my opponents kept saying, okay, I'll go first. I don't know why they thought I wanted to go first, so they wanted to throw me off by choosing first instead. But I was very happy because I wanted to go second every single time with this deck. So yeah, anyway, don't want to get too lost rambling here. But point being, Sabo is a very, very good counter to Moria and Katakuri, and can play really well into the other stuff that's in the meta right now, aside from that one deck, Reiju. And yeah, we'll get into the list here. I'll talk a little bit about my matchups and just give some maybe tips and tricks on how to use this deck. Yeah, all right, guys, let's get right into it. Alright guys, so let's get right into the list over here. So we have got our Sabo leader. For those of you who don't know what he does, Dawn ×1 on your opponent's turn only, once per turn. If one of your characters with 5,000 power or more would be KO'd, you may instead give that character minus 1,000 power during this turn. So basically, Sabo protects from one instance of KO per turn, and that is important to note. Despite the poor translation on the card, it is actually not just one character. If multiple characters would be KO'd in one instance, like for example via Lucci, Sabo can actually save all of those characters provided they're 5,000 power or more. So that is a really, really sick leader ability. Basically, this is going to help us a lot with with all the KOs that's running around in the meta right now. Moria is going to be using Absalom and Lucci. Sakazuki is also using Lucci. Katakuri is using Reject. There's a lot of different KOs that are available in the meta right now. Sabo basically just shuts all those down. Your opponent has to, try to bluff you somehow first, and then if you use the leader ability too recklessly, then your opponent can obviously punish you by then using an effect KO afterwards. But yeah, basically we just want to play it conservative, just block, counter, and just make it so that our opponent doesn't have that much Dawn left. And once they're at a point where, the amount of Dawn remaining makes it clear that they couldn't use an effect KO, then we can use Sabo to protect our units from battle KOs, which is really nice. It doesn't just protect from effects, also protects from battles. So if your opponent swings at life, you can block with one of your blockers and then use Sabo leader ability to protect your blockers. So you just get to stop one swing for free every single turn, which is super, super cool. All right, so let's get right into the list over here. We are running 4 copies of the Dawn Nami. Activate main once per turn. You can add a rested Dawn to one of your leaders or characters. We're almost always using this to add a Dawn to your Sabo leader because his ability only being live with 1 Dawn attached is probably one of the biggest downsides of him. And so Nami really allows us to mitigate that, makes our Dawn economy much, much more efficient. Drawing this turn 1, unless your hand is garbage, you almost always want to keep. Drawing Nami at the beginning of the game is going to be really, really helpful. Against Moria, maybe not so much just because it's likely to get KO'd by Absalom, but if I see like 2 Namis, I'm going to take it, because if I'm going second, I can just play both of them. Moria can KO one of them, but one of them is still going to give me value. So this being on the board early is going to be really, really good for you. And then we are going to get into our rush units. Be ashamed to run a red deck without any rush. We are running 4 copies of the classic 3-cost 5k Zoro. This is generally what you want to play on your second turn. So again, you always want to go second with this deck, and turn 1, ideally Nami. Turn 2, spend 3 for Zoro, attach 1 6k at life, then Nami attaches 1 to your leader, another 6k at life. Your opponent is almost bound to take one of those, and if they got unlucky and don't have any 2k counters in hand, they're going to take both of those. So Zoro is what you want to put on board, and then if your opponent tries to swing at him next turn and your opponent didn't manage to establish any bodies on their 3 Dawn turn, they are almost certainly not going to be able to kill this Zoro, because if they swing at it, just 5k, you counter, and if they swing at it heavy, you're just going to use your leader ability and say, okay, cool, I'll just protect Zoro for free. Really, really nice. Being able to establish a rush body that is almost bound to not leave the field the turn immediately after is very, very strong. And then we are going to be running 3 copies of Rush Luffy. 5 costs, 6k. With 2 Dawn attached, he becomes unblockable. This card is just such a major threat to so much of the meta right now, because Moria is often relying on those blockers like Sabo and Borsalino towards the late game to protect himself. I can't say the unblockable will come up that often. Most Moria players are going to be smart and going to prioritize removing this thing so that you don't just have an unblockable 16k that you can go at their face once they're at 0 life. But the threat is there, right? They have to deal with this immediately, and that's really nice, because having a 6k unit on board is just even more powerful, because they have to invest Dawn if they just want to do some test swings at it. They don't get to do those for free. They have to invest some Dawn to try to swing 6k at Luffy, and again, you have your counters to protect it, and you have your leader ability to protect it, which is really, really strong. So yeah, Rush Luffy, really, really good in this deck. You could make a case for 4, but honestly, I think 3 is fine. Zoro, I run 4 because I really want to see it early game. Luffy, I think if I see 1, usually I'm good, but obviously a second can be helpful. Then we are running 4 copies of the Borsalino. This is standard, man. 4 cost 6k blocker, can't be KO'd by effects, really useful into Moria. And again, with Sabo leader ability, we can, Sabo's leader ability just lends himself to blockers. It's an amazing, amazing feeling where you just put this down turn 2 and your opponent tries to swing at your life or something the next turn. Let's say they swing 7k at life. You can just block with Borsalino, activate Sabo leader ability, and then just minus Borsalino by 1k, and then you didn't even have to counter. You just block the swing for free. So that's really nice. Just blockers are very, very good in this deck. This guy has a counter and is a 6k on defense. Really, really nice. Now we are running 4 copies of the 5-cost Sabo. This gives us just a little bit of protection and some extra cycle, which is nice. So, obviously, as you guys know, on play, none of your units can be KO'd for the rest of the turn by effects, or for the next 2 turns by effects. And then also you get to draw 2 cards, trash 2 cards. It just helps you unbreak your hand. If you have too many no counter units in your hand, you can fish for a little bit of counter, or whatever it is that you're looking for. So this 5-cost Sabo is really, really helpful. Obviously, is going to be very good against Moria. Shut down those KOs. So then you can you don't have to play that whole baiting game of like, oh, should I use my leader ability to protect from a battle KO, because is there an effect KO coming up? You don't have to worry about that. You're protected from effect KOs, so you know exactly when to use your leader ability now. You just save it for one of those battle KOs, which is really, really nice. Now we are running 4 copies of Hina. Hina is an amazing card, just so goated in this deck. I think the reason she never sees any play is because Borsellino costs 1 less. He's also a 6k on defense. He's also a 1k counter. He's also Navy. So, just in every other way, Borsellino kind of trumps Hina. And Hina being 5 cost is still in that removable range. But the thing is, we're playing a leader who can prevent 1 removal per turn, which is crazy. Obviously, besides bottom decking or something like that, Sabo is able to just stop 1 KO per turn. Hina is so good because she's a blocker, and when she blocks, you get to select one of your opponent's characters that costs 6 or less, and that selected character just can't attack. Just cannot attack for the rest of the turn. This is so goated into Katakuri. Katakuri is going to be establishing these 4 cost, 5 cost bodies off of life, Satori, Kikunojo, all these units that Katakuri is going to be playing. They're in that sort of 4 cost range, or below. They're in Hina's range basically, until they get to like the 7-drop Lin and the big moms, obviously, the 10 cost moms. But Hina is going to be able to just freeze your Katakuri's board, and you are rushing your opponent down so aggressively in this matchup that in the Katakuri matchup, like, they have a Zoro and a Luffy on board to worry about. They don't usually have the luxury of just waiting till 10 dawn and dropping Big Mom and slow playing it like that way. They don't have the ability to play it out, because usually they are at 1 life by that final turn. If they play the Big Mom, you are going to punish them with this board of like 4 units you've established. You just swing with your blockers on that final turn and you'll be able to close out the game. So yeah, this is so good in the Katakuri. You just get to stop 1 swing for free every single turn. And I played 1 match against a cat at regionals, and I think we both had boards of 4, but again, his board was effectively 1 unit smaller, because every single turn I just got to stop one swing for free with Hina. And again, in this deck, you get to just block with Hina, and let's say your opponent swung like 8k, 9k, you just get to say, okay, cool, like, I'm just going to use my leader ability to protect Hina and just lower her by 1000 for the turn. So that is just such an amazing play. If you're playing this leader without this card, you're doing it wrong. This card is so goated in Sabo. Now we are running 4 copies of Lindbergh. This is nice because he is effectively kind of like a yellow unit. He's a 4 cost 5k who plays himself off of life if you hit him in trigger. So that's really good. And then also, when attacking, if he has 7,000 power or more, you get to KO one of your opponent's characters with 3,000 power or less. So that is really neat. There are some blockers that we can kill with that. Rebecca, obviously, in the Sokka matchup. We have a few ways to reduce power in this deck as well, which you'll see pretty shortly here. But yeah, Lindbergh is going to be really nice because just free advantage if you get him off of life. That just feels really nice. There's a few matchups where I just got him as my first life, immediately established an extra body. That's just so much more pressure on top of the rush units that you already have. So I just really like him mainly for that trigger effect, and the KO definitely does come up. Don't be too eager to use it, but being able to KO a unit on attack is very nice. So we'll get to the power reduction now, might as well. We have 4 copies of Koala, who on play, if your leader is Rev Army, which he is, you get to lower your opponent's characters by 3,000 power. So you can kill a 6,000 power unit if you have a Lindbergh already on board. Play Koala for 2, attach 2 Dawn to Lindbergh, swing 7k at life, and blow up a 6,000 power unit that you lowered with Koala. Very nice. And Otama, classic red card. Almost every red deck runs this. Pretty much same thing as Koala, except minus 2,000 power for 1 less Dawn. So you can kill a 5k unit if you have Otama and Lindbergh, kill a 6k unit if you have Koala and Lindbergh. And then final, guess might as well run the 3 Fire Fist. It's another power reduction card. This is going to be really helpful. It gives up to one of your opponent's characters minus 4,000 power during this turn. So again, same logic with the Otama and Koala. If your opponent has a 7k on board, you can just use a Fire Fist and Lindbergh to kill it. But also, if you have 2 or less life cards, you can get to KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 0 power or less. So that is really nice in the Saka matchup, or even the Moria matchup. Some people are running Rebecca blocker. So Rebecca blocker is 0k power. You can Fire Fist something, lower its power, and then KO Rebecca. And then you can use your Lindbergh to KO the other thing that you lowered, that's just a really sick play. And even if you don't have a Lindbergh on board, you can just manually swing into the unit that you lowered off of the Fire Fist. So that's really nice. Yeah, so, I really like these combos, just really helpful to clear board. Because generally with this deck, we do want to do a little bit of board clear, but this is also kind of like a blitz deck. Like, you're generally just going to be blitzing your opponent's life. Obviously, you have to assess the board state. It's different in every matchup, but you just kind of want to win the game relatively quickly, and then your opponent's board you're not too worried about because you have a ton of blockers and a leader ability that can just keep one of those blockers alive for free every single turn, which is gonna be really nice. So you don't have to worry about your opponent's board state too much. In Moria, I don't really like bothering killing their units because they're just gonna play them right back from trash. Again, towards like the kind of mid to late game, there's a certain point at which you have to say, like, okay, I'm low on life. I do need to allocate these swings towards units instead of his life because I need to make sure I don't just lose next turn. But yeah, this deck is kind of aggro, I'd say, with, again, a good amount of defense to protect itself. It's like a very even split between aggression and defense. And then just rounding out our 2k counters here, we have Bartolomeo. So we have 11 2k counters total in this deck. Barto's nice because he's also a blocker. Pretty rare that I'll play him, but if I just have a bad hand and don't have anything better to do on my second turn, I will just drop the Barto. Just, helpful to have a blocker. And obviously 2k counter that is revivable by Moria, which is really nice. So we are running 3 copies of Moria in this deck. This feels really, really good, especially if you have the Nami already on board or in your trash, because again, we always want to go even curve on this deck, and on 8 Dawn, we can actually just play Moria on curve, revive either a Zoro, if we're in a good life state or have some blockers up, we can revive a Zoro for an extra 5k swing at the opponent, or we can revive a Borsalino if we want to be a little more defensive. If we don't have blockers on board, we can revive a Borsalino. If you don't have either of those in trash, you can revive a Barto, which is cool because you got to use him as a 2k counter earlier in the game, and then you got to use him as a blocker later in the game by playing the Moria. And then obviously your second target that you want to revive off of Moria's ability is either the Koala or Atama if you want to lower something by some power and swing at it, or you can revive the Nami, which is almost always what I do, which allows you to put 1 Dawn on your leader ability. So even with only 8 Dawn, you can just drop the Moria, get a Zoro, swing 5k, attach get a Nami, and then attach 1 Dawn to your leader, swing 6k at your opponent, and then your leader ability is still live to protect against KOs the following turn. It works really, really nicely. I love having this card. Generally, you're not going to play more than 1 per game, but the 3 are just there so that we see it. If we end up with too many in hand, we can always cycle it out with the 5-cost Sabo. So very, very nice. I do like that we get to abuse the best card in the set. And then 4 copies of Radical Beam, any 4-life red leader. This is just a must. There's no reason why you wouldn't. 1 cost plus 4k. At the beginning of this video, I talked about a misplay that I made. And that was in my very first match. It was against Moria. I was 100%, dominating the game. But at the end of it, the opponent just decided that, if he doesn't win now, I'll win the next turn. So he decided to just go for it, just swing a bunch of 7Ks. And I had not seen a Rad Beam or might as well show it here, guard point. The entire game, we're running 4 rad beams, 2 guard points. I somehow did not see any of them the whole game, and I had only 1 life, and I thought in the back of my head, maybe I should leave up a Dawn just in case that last life was rad beam. Somehow forgot about that thought and didn't leave up any Dawn, and sure enough, my last life was the rad beam. So had I kept up the Dawn, I would have been fine. I lost by only 1k counter that game, so the rad beam would have, comfortably over-countered his last swing and I would have won, but alas, it is what it is. So just be aware of that. If you have 1 life remaining and you you can afford to keep 1 Dawn up, well, on what looks like could be your opponent's final turn, keep the 1 Dawn up. You just never know when one of these guys might come out of life, especially if you haven't seen him the entire game. But yeah, 4 guard points, or 4 rad beams, 2 guard points. Very just nice to have, because you do need some extra defense. On top of the 2k counters that we have, you do want to be able to stop a few swings without using your blockers, and that's this is going to help you a lot with that. I mean, a 4k buff for 1 Dawn is insane. 3k is also really damn good. And against Yamato, in the Yamato matchup, this just helps. We have extra sources of defense. Hody Jones can rest any 2 things on your board, be it Dawn or blockers. So generally, I want to keep up like 4 lines of defense in the Yamato matchup. If I see a Hody Jones coming up, I want to keep up like 3 blockers and a rad beam, or 2 blockers, 2 rad beams, something like that. Just want to keep up 4 lines of defense. When the Hody Jones hits, you'll be able to still counter out of those swings and save yourself, and then hopefully win the next turn when they take their life off of Hody. So yeah, guys, that is the deck, and it's been working really well. Again, I'm able to win pretty much every matchup with this consistently, except for Reiju, which is just really tough because they just spam EGGs. His minus 2k makes it so that you can't save things with your leader ability. Technically, you are still able to counter to raise the power of your unit so that it's 5k, and then use Sabo leader ability to protect the 5k unit. But still, I mean, EGG just turn after turn after turn is just too much pressure. So unfortunately, that matchup is just very, very tough. I do not have success with it against good players. But any other matchup, Sakazuki is kind of a 50-50. Katakuri, I feel heavily favored as long as I go second. The Moria matchup, again, feel very, very able to win that. The worst thing that Moria can do to you is just spam Peronas and force you to just discard again and again and again, which is why if they end up putting a Perona on board, I'm just definitely not going to kill that thing. Never going to kill that thing. I'm just going to leave it up, and I'm going to freeze it every turn using Hina or something like that. So yeah, I mean, this deck is able to perform very well into pretty much all of the meta. You just have to know how to play the matchups. Yamato, generally you want to counter early. Moria, you generally want to go for some aggression and establish a Hina, just because their board is all pretty much freezable by Hina. And then Katakuri, you want to go just blitz them with your rush units and also establish the Hina so that you can freeze one of their units every turn. So yeah, guys, very, very strong deck. I'm really enjoying it. Again, 6-3, not happy about it, but just knowing that I could have won one of those games, I am pretty proud of this deck overall. I'm gonna see how it does once the EV1 stuff comes out. I know that's not gonna change the meta too much, aside from maybe Black Yellow Luffy entering the mix, but I am gonna test this deck and see how it performs into that matchup and let you guys know if there's any updates there. But let me know what you guys think. I want to know your thoughts on this. I want to know if anybody else here has tried Sabo or seen any success with different cards. I know there's some other things you can throw in here like Shiraya, and a few other things that I might not necessarily be crazy about, but let me know how else you would run this and what you guys think of it. All right, thank you so much. We will see you guys in the next video. Peace.